I welcome everybody. Appreciate all the board members being here and for Joe to join us as well. Can we adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Renetta, will you do
Mr. Chairman,
briefing?
can you hear me? This is Regina. Could pause for 1 second. We're doing some things technical here.
Okay, Regina, you're coming in loud and clear from the room.
Number or you are eligible.
Okay.
You need the
If you could just give us 1 moment.
Okay, we'll be on standby.
Okay. Did you, okay. You have your computer open. So did you click on the link?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. We're working on Bobby Stein. He's logging in. So tech is working with him to get him logged in. So if you'll just give us a couple of seconds, we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
okay,
step
no, you're good, you're good. We're gonna go ahead and start the meeting. Mr. Stein requested that we do, and if he's able to join us, he certainly will. So,
Great. Thank you. Sorry it didn't work out easily. So Ray, could you give us a safety briefing?
yes, sir, be glad to. So we have a full conference room here. I think indicates the interest of this item. And so for those of you in the conference room, we're going to evacuate by the steps, and then we are going to meet up at the courthouse. Keep your phones on silent. A volunteer to call 911. Thank you, Haibu. All right, very good. And for those that are virtual, be mindful of your surroundings.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Comments from the public? Landon?
For those that have joined us virtually, you can go ahead and raise your hand. If you haven't seen the video already, in the participant pane in the bottom right-hand corner, if you click that, there is an option for you to raise your hand. If you activate that feature now, it will allow me to see if you would like to speak for public comment. So we will wait a few moments. I do not see any raised hands from the public. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to y'all. Thank you.
Landon, I think we have asked those that are here if they would like to make public comment, and I think we do have someone that would like to make public comment. We're going to recognize you, Mr. Parra.
I'm Bud Parra. I'm with the St. John's Riverkeeper. In the 2023 Electric Integrated Resource Plan, which was adopted by this board just a year ago, there were two major capital projects, 1,275 megawatts of solar by 2030, and then the evaluation of a natural gas combined cycle by 2030. We're just curious as to where we are on those two projects and what the schedules are. Thank you.
Ray, can you answer that?
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. So we presented this to the board, as the board might recall, two board meetings where we were talking about the initiation of the need for power process. And so that schedule that we presented, we're pretty much tracking with that schedule and the next board presentation. So nothing has changed from that. Let me say that. And the next presentation, I believe, is scheduled for in the next couple of months. So basically, we're in the study phase and in the investigation phase for the combined cycle. For the JEA solar, those are the solar sites on land that is owned by JEA. We have recently we're moving forward with that, and recently our CEO has executed the agreements. Those are the purchase agreements, and the land use agreements are the next to come. So progress is being made. Thank you. Welcome.
Are there any further comments from the public? If not, Ray, it's your show.
That's a lot of pressure, Chair Baker.
That's
All
right.
right. Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to welcome the committee, Chair Baker, Mr. Morales, Dr. Faison, and the other board members, General DeSalvo, and hopefully Mr. Stein will be able to join us. So this is our inaugural meeting, the first of the Capital Projects Committee, and we are glad that you are here. We have a full agenda for today, and if you look at the meeting overview, there are four major items that we would like to go over. So the first item is an information item, and this was at the request of Chair Baker, and I'm glad that it is on here. We were going to jump full bore into the projects, but I think it's good to put this discussion into some context. And what the request was is, how do we go about executing capital projects here at JEA? And so we're going to do a high level overview of the capital project delivery process. So that's the first item. The second item is going to be presented by our CFO, Ted Phillips. And what this are the proposed enhancements to the controls and the contracting for our projects, and specifically those projects that are delivered what we call alternative delivery. CMAR is one of those, progressive design build is another. And as Mr. Baker, Mr. Morales may recall, some of these enhancements were identified when we had the workshop that was related to the ratification of certain capital projects. Other enhancements were identified by staff as well as by internal audit. And so Ted's going to go over that. The last three items are related specifically to projects. So the Buckman Water Reclamation Facility upgrades, this was one of the projects that was brought before to the board, first in the workshop. This was a project that we ratified. We discussed this, as I said, at that workshop. And we communicated both at the workshop as well as the board meeting that there was additional work that was going to be needed and that we would be coming back before you with a recommendation for awarding that work. And so that's the purpose of that item being there. That fourth bullet, that's the Arlington East expansion phase 2. This is another major project that is underway. And we are bringing this before this committee and then later to the board as an information item. And this is part of what Ted's going to go over, our enhanced communication with the board. This is within staff's delegated authority, but we thought that it would be good to communicate since this is such an important project, and as well as the dollar value of that. And then finally, the last item on this agenda is acquisition of easements. And this acquisition of easements is in support of 2 major projects, one an electric transmission that's being planned, and the second a water transmission lines that are currently underway. And the easements will support the completion of those projects. So in a nutshell, five items, most of them information, and a few action items that you'll see at the next board meeting. So I would like to thank our staff for putting this together. This is a high-level overview of the project delivery process, as it says there. And the reason I want to thank our staff for doing this, there are several folks that are in this room that are part of this delivery process. And there are, and I'm not being dramatic, probably about 50 worksheets and flow charts that spell out this process. But we wanted to distill it down to the major functions. And so basically what this shows us is that there's 4 major components: project identification, project funding, project execution, and then finally integration of that project into our system. And underneath there are the subcomponents, starting all the way to the left from the drivers of a project, whether it's growth, whether it's renewal and replacement, or whether it's regulatory drivers, all the way to the end when we are integrating that asset into our system and then accounting for it, basically putting it on the books. And I'll go into to some depth on each one of these on the subsequent slides, and please stop me if there's any questions. So how does a bill become a law? We start at project identification. Okay, so that's the first part. And as I said, 3 major ways that a project, 3 major drivers for a project: demand, our growth. Our system is growing. How do we meet that demand? Aging infrastructure, resiliency, reliability, all those come under the renewal and replacement. And then the third, and our most favorite, are regulatory driven projects. There's some levity there. But regulations are coming, environmental regulations or what have you, that we must address. So those are the three major drivers. Now, the project owners consist of project managers. It consists of the directors, the VPs, all the way up to senior leadership. So these projects are identified, and depending on the scope of that project, we'll get studies done. Those studies can be internal studies. We'll get engineering firms to conduct those studies, both near and long term. We're forecasting demand in the area, and again, assessing the regulations. Projects are assigned a category. So the category could be distribution, category could be transmission, category could be treatment, all of these things. They're assigned a category. We try to identify a delivery type, what is going to get us the best benefit for executing that project. Maybe it's alternative delivery, maybe it's standard delivery, what have you. There's a priority and then a general scope. We put together what's called a project definition document, which basically it's kind of like a one-stop. What is entailed in this project, where you have those 3 things: scope, budget, schedule, and what's driving the project. And then depending on the size, scope, what have you, it goes to approval. It could be the manager, director, VP, again, depending on those things. Funding is critical to this. And I'll say this is where the controls start coming in, and Ted, please jump in if I say anything erroneously here. We have a team known as the Capital Core Team, which is made up of our individual project managers, which is made up of our directors, which is made up of our VPs, and which is made up of our finance team as well. And what this team does, it meets periodically, meets monthly. We have an electric capital core team, we have a water capital core team, and then all the support that makes those two primary businesses function. So we ensure that the allocation of the funds are there. All new projects go through the capital core team. And we establish the expenditure limits, establish those limits on an annual basis, as well as project for the duration of the project. There's something that's called the overall project budget, fondly known as the OPB. And we ensure in that it goes to the rates team that what we are identifying for the capital improvement program, that the rates can support that, or if the rates don't support that, what the effect is going to be. And I would like to call this like an iterative process. And then that gets documented in our annual budget. And the annual budget is approved on an annual basis. So for that year, that comes before the board, and that also goes, of course, to the city. Part of the enhancements that Ted is going to talk about is when we're doing that annual presentation, to put more focus on those major projects, that portfolio of projects, to make the board aware of that.
Ray?
Yes,
let me
sir.
ask you a question, but what I don't see in this process so far, and I'm sure it's in one of those 50 pages that you mentioned, but I don't see the evaluation of alternatives for solving the issue that is requiring the capital, and the evaluation of are we doing it in the best way? Is it state of the art? Is it the most efficient? How do we go about weighing all the alternatives before we say, I want to do such and such at the water plant? So help me understand the analysis that goes into it.
Yes, sir. That's a great question. Could you go back one slide, please? So under the project identification, you'll see there conducting the long-term system studies, near-term. And so we try to distill this down to just a few bullets. But in those studies, sometimes we'll get an engineering firm to say, and Buckman's a good example of that. This is the issue with Buckman. Give us some alternatives. Give us a variety of alternatives. And what the team will do is look at those alternatives, and whichever one, for whatever reasons, it could be O&M costs, it could be capital costs, it could be regulations or what have you, will choose and pick an alternative. And that is what goes forward. So these things look like they're standing alone, like I just do project identification, but you could almost do a circle of this. So something's identified, it goes to funding. And so say whoever's involved with the funding, that same question could be asked. Okay, this has come from the team as the project, but what did you look at? Let me look at the alternatives that are there. So it starts in the project identification. When you're seeing the identification of those projects, the studies, a lot of times different things are looked at. And that's as well as from our internal staff during the planning process. But that could be challenged again during the funding of the project. That question never stops being asked until it is approved and it is in the budget. Does that answer the question?
And does the CEO sign off on it, or is it the capital committee that pretty well does it?
So the CEO, it's all, yes, to all of that. Depending on the granularity. So the capital project committee signs off on every single project. By the time it gets to the CEO level, you're looking at the portfolios of project under the different areas. But projects can get called out. Projects can get called out more so than portfolio. And that's part of what Ted's going to be talking about, our process going forward to make things, especially those those projects that have a lot of visibility, those projects with a lot of consequences can get called out. Because in the past, what the board would see, perhaps you would see under these areas, these are the water projects. So this is the amount, right? And the same thing for electric. But what we are hoping to do with this capital projects committee, as well as with the new process, is really making it aware of those specific projects that are within that portfolio.
Thank you.
My question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Hey,
So,
Bobby.
Ray, how often do y'all meet to where I just came in late, so I apologize. I'm asking questions that have already been asked, but how often do you meet, and is there a size of a project that goes in that portfolio, or is it every project? And how do you know how to measure if it's successful or not? Those are three different questions, and I apologize.
No, it's fine. Capital Projects Committee meets monthly. And every single project can get reviewed. And so what the Capital Projects Committee does is looking at the entirety of the projects, and some of those projects will stand out. And the way that the projects stand out is, say for instance, it's behind schedule, or if additional funds.
That was, Ray, does that also include any change orders and so forth? The change of scope, does that come before the committee?
Yes, sir, it does, but it depends. There could be a change order that has no bearing on the schedule. There could be a change order that has no bearing on the scope, or it could be a change. So it depends on I'll say the severity. But every single one of those projects is reviewed monthly. And what the group is looking for, so we have said that in totality, the budget is this, right? Let's say it's like $100 million. Hey, but we're forecasting now that it's going to be like $120 million. And so every project manager is part of that forecasting. So the discussion is, well, what's happened? Why is that? Or the budget could have been $100 million and we're forecasting it's $70 million. So what's happening with that? And so every single one of those projects, and then it goes up depending on what's happening, but every single month that's looked at.
But is there the two questions, is there certain size that y'all meet that have every month, is there a certain size, number one? And number two, is there a way you measure, if it is anybody audited this process and saying what's working and what's not?
Yeah. This process has been in effect for, oh my gosh, before I got here, 18 years.
No, 2018.
2018.
With CMAR, PMAR.
No, not the CMAR. I think the whole capital project delivery process has been in effect for a number of years. Yeah, and as far as like the previous audits, I can't tell you that as far as like recently. But yeah, this has been in effect for a number of years, and it has very distinct checkpoints. And I'll go into this. So you like success. What's not shown here. So even though your project might be 100,000, funds aren't going to be released unless certain things have happened. And the checkpoint could be, a 30% design. The checkpoint could be a PNID. And so that is to make sure that the funds are commensurate, or the release of funds is commensurate with the scope, which gets to like the success.
No, but the 2 points, and I'm sorry, is there a size that you have that is involved every month? Number one. Number two, is anybody ever looked at what's working, what's not working in this process that y'all meet every month? Are there any things that we've learned from the past? Has anybody looked at this process?
So the size are. I don't
But
believe-
separate, two separate questions.
Okay, I'm gonna get to the size question first, Bobby. I think all capital projects goes through this process. And a capital project, I don't know what the minimum for a capital, but all capital projects go through this process, sir.
Okay.
And as far as,
Yeah, has anybody looked at this whole process and said, this works, this hadn't worked? We can do this better, we can do that better.
yes. So as the team works with this process, the process has been tweaked along the way, along the years. And the team has identified, whether it's from a financial or whether it's from a project manager perspective, how the process needs to evolve or what things can be enhanced. And so the process has changed, or I would say evolved over the years. You know, how we identify something, strengthening up I'll call it the initial project definitions, so that the project definitions have better costs with them, the scheduling, and all of that. So the process has evolved.
Ray, there are two things I gleaned from our first meeting with Rick and me is, one, there seemed to be a number of these projects which, for one reason or another, haven't been successful. You know, they talk at Buckman about how the screens didn't work as well, or this and that. That, of course, is a red flag. The second one, and probably even more importantly, I think in this day and time, is that getting multiple contractors to bid and put a guaranteed maximum price out is problematic. And that's so different than the world that we all grew up in, where if the thing ran over, it wasn't JEA's problem, it was the project manager's problem. And so I think, and you may be miles ahead of me on this, but I think it would be worthy of consideration is to say, in this new era where we're really taking responsibility for these projects and can't put it on a contractor, you know, are we sure that this is the right project? You know, what happens if the project gets reevaluated and needs to be up 30 or 40%? What do we do about that? Because that's what, as you go through these various projects that we're reviewing now, is alarming to me. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows that nothing about this is easy, but that we're doing everything we can to make sure that in this day and time that we are absolutely state of the art in our evaluation of capital projects and also in our execution of them. That's
Yes.
just a statement. That it doesn't require an answer, I know.
Thank you, Chair Baker. I do want to speak to the successfulness of the projects, and you call out, rightfully so, I think one of the things under Buckman as far as like the screens. I think what this illustrates is whatever the various reasons were, I think this is a cautionary tale for waiting too long to conduct a project and to invest in infrastructure. So you see things as far as some of these facilities were built 1956, 1960. And you see some of these projects talking about failing equipment or failing infrastructure. So I think this is more a cautionary tale about getting ahead of that and making sure that the investments in the infrastructure are happening in the time that they need to happen.
Agreed.
And one thing I would say, and it reiterates John's point and Rick's point, is we've never been, I mean, the last 3 or 4 years have been difficult in supply chains, difficult on getting labor, getting, there's never been so many busy contractors. So I think what I'm trying to understand is just how can we help? So this is my thoughts. So we're going through a very difficult time as far as construction is concerned, but how can we be more efficient is in my mind.
Yeah. One thing from my side that was very concerning was the project that you did put out for bid earlier this year, or late last year. I forget the exact timing, that you only received one bid,
Yes.
which is very concerning. And have you met with you basically appear to have 3 different contractors doing the majority of this work, which was an even larger group. But anyway, have you had any meetings with them and just talked to them about, why are you not bidding on these projects, and, what's the difference and so forth? I mean, have you had any of those conversations?
Yeah, yes, Rick, that's a great question. And so the Arlington East WRF Phase 2 is the one that we had the one bid, and we're going to go into that when we present that project. But it's a great question. And while this one is being presented to the board, for any of our projects that may not come before the board, if we end up with a single bidder, or if we end up with something that looks like that's concerning to us, our procurement team will go back to not only the ones that proposed, but the suite that didn't propose, and ask the question, well, why? What was it? But we'll go into specifics when we present Arlington. Great question.
Okay, look forward to it.
Keep going, Ray. We've tried to bog you down.
No, all great questions. Okay, I'm going to go to, I think, did we talk about project execution? Well, we kind of talked about project execution during the Q&A. So our procurement team assists with whatever the solicitation is, procuring of the materials, and then eventually award. And that award, several approvals for that award, going all the way to the awards committee, which is an internal staff committee, and going up to the CEO, if that's within the delegated authority. The board is I'll call the awards committee for anything that exceeds that delegated authority. We manage the projects during the duration, looking at those 3 things that a project is managed: schedule, cash or financing of it, and quality of the work. And then, as I said before, funding is allocated or released based on certain milestones. And as we talked about, monthly budget reporting and statuses with the capital core team. I'll go to the next one. And then finally, after all is said and done, we built something, project is over. It's not quite over, because we have to make sure that the documentation is there, that we can see those as built, and that it gets integrated into our GIS system, and that it's on our books, it's on our financial books. We book that asset. Okay. Next, unless there's any questions from the committee before we go into the enhancement of the controls and contracting. Okay, so as I said, out of the workshop, from the ratifications workshop, and then again at a subsequent board meeting, there were recommendations that were made. There were previous recommendations that were made by our internal audit. Our staff made recommendations on the different contracting and the executing of projects. We brought all of this together and are proposing some enhancements. Ted's going to go over that. This is an information item here. We're looking for your input, and we'll be coming back, I don't believe in the May board meeting, but in the June board meeting for some approvals. I'll turn it over to you, Ted.
Thanks, Ray. So good morning. So I'm breaking my presentation. Can we go back to the First slide, please. Into three areas. Things that we've done to ensure the delegation of authority limits are not exceeded. Changes to the construction manager at risk, or CMAR, contracting process, and improvements in the level of communication for large projects. And Ray alluded to a few of these things. Also, on the changes to the CMAR contracting process, we will also incorporate these changes into our other alternate procurement methods. So, but we'll get more in detail. And as Ray said, we're looking for input from the committee on some of these items to make sure that we're meeting the expectations. So, on the delegation of authority, so we've made some changes to the procurement code, or the P code, that will incorporate reference to the delegation of authority, corporate policy, and limit the authority of the awards committee to approve contracts up to $100 million. So we did not have that wording currently in the P code, so we will be updating that. We also will be refining our operational procedures. So we will make reference to the delegation of authority in our procedures. We will clearly define the applicable limits for each contract or award, and then we will be putting into place a process for contracts that are over $100 million to bring back to the board for their approval.
Ted, let me just make one comment here if I could.
Sure.
One of the things that seemed to have come up in the 4 or 5, I forget the exact number of projects that was brought to the board, and that we discussed in depth, is just the issue that there is a large capital project. You start with the design build, you know, the budget is somewhere near 100 million or in excess of 100 million. And the shocking part was the board didn't hear a word about it until, okay, well, now it's over 100 million, so now we're going to tell you about it. And
Yes,
that was part of the concern, is just we need to be in the loop much earlier, instead of just, okay, well, we just tripped a magic number, now we got to tell you about it.
Yeah, yes, sir. So if you would bear with me,
Sure.
These improved communications, that's going to get right at the heart of that, I believe. So
Thank you.
So when we get to point number 3, I'll define for you what we're thinking about and recommending. And here again, would like your feedback on that's too little, Ted. That's too much, Ted. So hopefully in 5 minutes, I'll be answering that question for you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ted, one other thing to think about, besides the board approving over 100 million, why don't you think about a number that would be appropriate when there is a busted budget or revised schedule or revised estimate of 10 million more than was estimated in the beginning, so that we're seeing that this process is working and not, sloppy.
My other question, John and Rick, is what is the right, is it 100 million? Is it 50 million? What is the right number?
I think that's the 64 million or 50 million or 100 million question. Yeah, I think there needs to be a much lower threshold that the board needs to be advised about it and so forth. I mean, the $100 million I thought had more to do with bond trading and everything else and so forth, that the CEO had the ability to purchase power and different things and so forth. And suddenly,
the majority of that was fuel.
Yeah. So that's where I thought that number came from, and maybe the capital project needs a lower number for capital projects, so the board is really more engaged.
What should that, in your mind, what should that number be?
25 or 50 million. I mean, I would think.
Can I give a little?
Talking a lot of money here, people.
Yeah, can I just maybe give a little context to help? We did a review of all of our projects that we are projecting to spend more than $75 million on, all right? Not this year, but the life of the project. So there were 19 projects currently in flight that we have forecasted a OPB of more than $75 million. 4 of those were in water, 14 of those were in wastewater, and 1 of those was in electric. Now, if you ratchet that down to 50 million, we're looking at 27 projects. So that would be 6 in water, 17 in wastewater, and 4 in electric. So to give you a little bit of context of what we're talking about. So that was one of my questions. If since we're already talking about this, can we move forward a couple of slides and we'll come back? We'll come back to changes.
You understand where we're going?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
the one thing is you add all those projects up, you're talking about $1.5 billion. So it's, it's.
Yes, sir. So if at the $50 million, those 6 water projects, that's $719 million. Those 17 wastewater projects, that's $2.6 billion. And the 4 electric projects is just over $1 billion. So I think to try to give some context on both the dollar amounts and the number of projects. Can we go to the next slide, please?
And obviously all these projects don't come up at the same time. I mean, I think that something closer to that $50 million number, because it adds up very quickly to billions.
Yes, sir. So, and if this is not what you want us to do, we obviously can pivot. But what the thought is that during the budget process, so we're going to meet in about a month to talk about our budget for 25. We would do a review of all of these large projects, whether it's the 27 that are 50 million or the 19 that are 75 million or another number that you would be comfortable with us using. But we will go through all of these projects, whether we have just started the project like the natural gas project that we're working on, where we're in the very early study stages. We haven't spent very much money on that project, to some of the other projects that we've already reviewed with you and are close to completion, right? But anything that will have money in the 25 budget for projects that are over the threshold where we set that number. And then our plan was, as we have these capital committee meetings, is to bring back those projects to you at each capital project meeting and give you an update. So some of them may be lengthy because there may be some things that have happened. We're approaching milestones, etc. Some of them may be very short, that we're basically the same place we were the last time we met, but we'll be giving you updates. So, Ms. Morales, that is what I think, how we get away from that, oh my gosh, we've hit the $100 million mark, and now we're just telling you about the project, right? We want to tell you about these projects when they are initially budgeted, and then we will keep updating you through the life of the project so that you will know. And then if there are changes that need to be made to the project, whether it's due to cost overruns or cost underruns, there's changes that need to be made to the schedule, either the project is sliding longer and taking longer to complete, or we have made a change in the process and we've shortened up something. But we will go through that with you on a depending on how often this committee meets. If it meets quarterly or semi-annually, there again, we wanted your input on that. And then like the next bullet point says, the communication around the project requirement scope, procurement strategy. So you'll know before we even go and do something like a CMAR bidding. We will explain to you beforehand why we think that is the best method to use, and get your input on that as we move along through the process. And then if there are,
So you're 100%, Ted. So we're looking for the committee's input on this. First, the current delegated authority is 100 million. If the committee would like something different than that, we're looking for that input. We as staff identify for communication purposes the 75 million. So one is an approval. The other is how we're going to communicate our projects. So if there's something less than that, again, looking for input. We're bringing
another dumb question is, every one of these projects, do you know how much debt you're going to put on these, or do you just have a thought on debt as it comes up? And this is the size of projects we have in totality, or do you say, we start this project, our goal is to have 50% debt on this project, or 25% debt, or do y'all just look at, we've got a group of capital projects and
we look at issuing the debt more from a portfolio view than a specific project view. Now, we have to understand the projects that make up the portfolio. I wouldn't say it's just, we look at just that one number of the portfolio. We look at the things that make it up. But we do not say specifically project X, we are going to fund completely with debt, or 50% with debt, or whatever. We do it from a portfolio process, but we also do it on a reimbursement basis. So most of the time, by the time we issue the debt, we have already spent the money, and we are just paying ourselves back. And sometimes we use our short-term bridging methods to span that gap. But that is the way that we currently do it.
Ted, I think to move this along, because I'm seeing this being an all-night deal. My suggestion, and subject to the other board members' approval or disapproval, is what's been broken, in my view, is that we really didn't, we may have had the budget as an approval line item, and the whole budget was stuck in one of 700 pages that we were given the week before. And there was no analysis whatsoever by the board or focus by the board on these specific projects. And I think that's why we're here, of course. And I think for starters, we ought to go to quarterly capital project meetings and $50 million for board approval. And then try that for a year or so and then reevaluate it. But I think right now you're looking at a board that feels like they've been deprived of information, not intentionally, but effectively. And they want it and they feel like it's necessary for them to do their jobs.
I would just add one thing to that and some type of a dashboard of those list of those projects for us to
Thank
be able to look at it and so forth. I mean, just some way to really be able to get around those 30 or so projects that you mentioned, Ted.
Yes, sir. And we have that. We use that internally, so we'll share that with you. And so I know the purpose is not to brag on my staff, but they did a really good job building some good dashboards over the last year. So
Thank you.
happy to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that input.
Yes, that is very, very helpful. And then also we will, if for some reason during the year something comes up and waiting to the next quarterly capital projects meeting would not be good for us. It would slow the project down so much. We always could come just to a regular board meeting and discuss a specific item with a specific project if you are good with that.
And you can call this committee together in 3 days.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Needed.
Okay. Thank you for that. So if we could go back one slide, I do want to talk just a minute, and I'll try to be brief, Chair Baker. But we have made some changes to our CMAR process that I think is important for us to talk about. So we have taken the input that Mr. Baker and Mr. Morales gave us on adding cost management components to evaluate criteria, requesting the contractor's approach to delivery of the project and projected project cost to be included in their proposals. So we've built that into our process. We've also have already made the changes to our templates that internal audit suggested by adding language to require additional backup information, certifying what is considered non-reimbursable cost, adding additional details to what is considered the cost of work, and adding language on how equipment will be rented equipment will be invoiced to JEA. So also working with our owners reps and some of the lessons we've learned. We've rewrote how pre-construction services should be paid. We've added cost of the work requirements for labor to be included in tracking and recording of actual hours by employees, including proof of payment to each employee and setting limits on maximum rental rates. And so what we would like to do is at the June meeting, we will bring red lines of the procurement code to you. We would bring red lines to our processes for as a informational item. We will also bring red lines of the contracting process to you for your review. So just wanted to touch on a few of those items.
I had looked at that in detail, Ted, and I think it's a good step towards, that previous committee meeting we had and so forth. And thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, John, could I have a quick comment?
Yes, sir.
So, and Rick, you may have just answered it, but this is, Ted, this is a great slide. So just from a real dumb question, and I think it's covered in here. How do we, to combat the narrative, the JEA eats cost overruns, how do we answer that? When it's not our fault, when the contractor's behind on something or, whatever, and I got it, some supply chain issues can crop up, labor issues or whatever, but just how do we answer that it's not necessarily we eat the cost every time, there's some accountability mechanism for whoever we have contracted doing the work.
One of you guys want to help me with this, that's doing it on a daily basis? Pedro?
Go ahead. DeSalvo, this is a great question. So let me give you a recent example without naming any specific, just to make sure we don't point any fingers. So we have some contracting in which we close the book, right? We have a specific methodology. We close the book. And as we were performing the work, there were considered concealed conditions that were claimed, JEA. So the team worked with our legal team to ensure that there is evaluation of any of these claims, work with the procurement team to make sure it evaluates these claims, and we push back on those items. Items at times are negotiated down. There are some risk registers also in some projects that we have built in that this contractor needs to pull from, right? So we push them in that direction to make sure it is covered. There are also delays associated with weather that are specifically itemized to make sure that, and they're also administratively tracked to make sure we're clear on where we at. When there are changes, we do evaluate an open book type of contracts. Talk about the closed book, now I'll talk about the open book version of it, in which we have access to the bids that were received. We have access to challenge and compare with other projects that we have done. We had recently an example, a dirt removal project in which we actually challenged the pricing that was given to this contractor. And we said, we might have to rebid it. So those push do take place. That's the current state. But we are seeing increases. We also need to acknowledge that we are seeing increases in material cost. When we look at what we were paying for in 2020 for some of the concrete, some of the steel type of work that needs to be done, we are paying a significant amount that is very hard to predict where we are today. There's stability on that. And those are the ones that we do. We have a team dedicated to review the market, to compare what the market trend has been recently in the past 3 years, 5 years, for us to understand our decision-making on whether or not to accept an increase associated with material, as an example. So those are controls and pieces that we utilize. So we evaluate what are the requests are, either the claim, some of them are realistic and they get compared. Some of them are substantiated well. And in addition to that, we have the monitoring of the project. The idea is not to exceed the project, which means we push to make sure there's opportunities to improve the execution of the projects, the construction of the projects, to reduce the overall final actuals on these projects. Hopefully that kind of summarizes the three main elements that we utilize.
Only thing that I would add to that, those are controls that we would exercise, saying we're going to continue with that contractor or with that engineering firm. We talked before at the workshop, as well as I think at the board meeting, about off ramps. So if it gets to a point that we don't agree, say that the pricing is so onerous and we just cannot make headways or get to a point of agreement, we will off ramp. What that means is basically, thank you, give us the design and we'll choose a different delivery and we'll off ramp at that point. Or we'll say, thank you, we're going to halt this and we'll look at maybe contracting this differently and then go our ways. That has been executed in the past. Contracting companies don't like that because there's been investment in that. We don't like that because there's schedule impacts to it. But if we think that it's not good for our customers, not good for JEA, we will initiate the off ramps. I has been part of off ramping. Jenny has been part of off ramping. So that is our other control that we have if we don't think that it's good to go forward.
And not to
Okay.
not to beat a dead horse, General Salvo, these are the exact things that we would be talking about at these quarterly update meetings. So,
Right.
so if we get to a situation where we're working on a project and we are in disagreement with the contractor, you'll be knowing about that. You will be sharing with you what our plans going forward are, whether we're going to off ramp or continue to negotiate, or et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you.
Okay, no, it's very helpful, and just maybe something to consider. In light of these variables, like the labor issues, supply chain issues, do we have the right contracting mechanisms, or do we need to look at the traditional ones we've been using, or do we need to be more innovative? Easier said than done, with maybe, finding new contracting mechanisms that account for these variables that limit our vulnerability. And maybe that's part of the risk management thing. So really just a comment.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Does that conclude your remarks, Ted?
Yes, sir. Just to be double sure I understood what was said. So as far as giving updates, the threshold is the $50 million currently, and we can change this as we like, but as you like, $50 million, and we will have quarterly plan for quarterly capital project committee meetings.
Or it's needed, depending.
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Baker, committee members, I know that it was the 50 million as far as getting updates. Was there also the recommendation of changing the 50 million to the delegated authority, reducing from 100 million to 50 million?
Yes.
Okay, then that will go to the board meeting. That will be an item for the board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That we can move on through the rest of my slides. I think we covered it all. So I'll be quiet so Ray can talk to you some more.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and now move to the projects. So the first project, I'm gonna start this one, and then Haibu's gonna get into the specifics as far as status and recommendations. So this is one again that we talked about before at the workshop, and then this was ratified at the board meeting, and we said that we would be coming back. There's more work to do. So this is us coming back. So next slide. So Buckman, for those that don't know, Buckman is our largest water reclamation facility out of the 11 that we have. It treats about 30 million gallons a day. And JEA treats about 80 million gallons a day. So it's more than a third of our flow. Buckman also includes what's called a residuals management facility. And that basically is taking trash and making it into treasure. It's taking sludge and making it into a usable product called biosolids, which is a usable project. It's pelletized and it goes into fertilizer. And the reason that I'm spending time on that is the majority of the expenditure requests or the future awards is around the residuals management facility. Okay. Next, please. So we say water, the upgrades projects. So Buckman actually consists of 8 projects. The biosolids processing facility is the one that I was just referring to. That is the majority of the cost. Hi is going to go into that. Of these 8 projects that are listed, number 2, the blower system improvement, number 3, the UV system improvement are finished. Those have been constructed. When you all approve the ratification, those projects are finished. Now, those projects came in less than what the guaranteed maximum price, and so I'll talk about that a little bit. Number 4 and number 8. So fine screen replacement as well as the O&M building replacement are substantially completed, more than 75% complete. We're not asking for any additional funds. So where we're going to spend our time on are those, we're going to spend more of our time on those projects that are still underway or that we need funding for. But certainly the committee can ask any questions that the committee chooses to ask. And Hy's going to go into depth. The contracting mechanism for this was construction manager at risk, which we talked about before, which is under this umbrella of alternative delivery. Wharton is the construction manager on this. And what I will say, while it's the biosolids processing facilities, and these have been discrete projects, it was brought under the umbrella of the CMAR, brought under the umbrella of Wharton, because all of these projects were happening at Buckman. And the thought was for scheduling, for coordination, for all of those things, for efficiency, to bring it all under this umbrella. And I think that is
Ray, just let me ask one question real quick about that. Is that how this whole started? This was when this whole upgrade started, and I know we met and understood a little bit about the was it always CMAR, or did it start as a bid project and then turned into CMAR? How did it start?
Wonderful question. He's going to kick me under the table if I say something wrong. So for the facilities, for the biosolids processing facility, that did start as an alternative delivery, Rick.
Okay.
Now the smaller projects, they didn't start out as CMAR. I think the discussion, they could have been like a regular bid, and the discussion was, we're having all of these, disparate projects going on. Let's bring that under the umbrella of CMAR. Did that answer the question, sir?
Yes, ma'am, it did. It did. Thank you. Just want to understand the big picture. Thank you.
Okay. Next. Oh, Hi Vu, our VP, GM of Water Wastewater, is going to go into the specifics. I'm going to stop talking. Hi.
Good morning, Chair Baker and committee members. I'll talk specifically about each project. Please stop me anytime you have any questions. So shown in the slide is a rendering of the new biosolids processing facility. It is currently in final design with construction estimated to be completed in 2018. The construction cost is estimated to be $274.3 million. Why are we doing this project? The existing facility has been operating since 1958. It has been upgraded and expanded over the years, but the majority of the mechanical equipment at the building have reached the end of their useful lives and must be replaced. Moreover, the facility has only one dryer, one point of failure. So when it fails,
can you speak up? I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The facility has only one dryer, and when it fails, JEA has to haul and dispose of the lower quality class of biosolids via land application or landfills, and that can cost up to millions of dollars each year. So in 2020, JEA completed evaluation of 4 alternatives to manage the biosolids. This goes back to what Ray talked about. In the study phase, we evaluated what is best for JEA. So we evaluated direct drying, alkaline stabilization, composting, and landfilling and land application. And we considered many factors, such as capital and O&M cost, the ease of product disposal, reliability and redundancy, beneficial reuse, permitting, public acceptance. And in the end, direct drying with separate sludge thickening and dewatering facilities and redundant dryers was selected. So the new facility will consist of a sludge thickening building, bulk polymer storage and feed building, magnesium hydroxide storage and feed building, and a new 3-story biosolids dewatering building. Warren Smith successfully completed the construction of the blower system in 2022 at a cost of $11.6 million. At Buckman, air was supplied to the microorganisms via 4 turbo blowers, each containing 2 cores. These turbo blowers you see on the top right were and are very efficient, but they have had premature failures of the variable frequency drives and blower cores since the startup in 2014 and are not reliable. So this project added 50% supplemental air and was fully integrated into with the turbo blowers and aeration system via a more conventional centrifugal blower, providing redundancy and reliability.
Hi, look straight forward when you're talking, because when you look at the camera, when you look at the lens, we kind of lose your voice. Just look straight ahead. Don't worry
Yes,
about
sir.
looking at the
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The third project, Warren Smith also successfully completed construction of the UV system improvements in 2023 at a cost of $14.4 million. The prior UV disinfection system was installed in 2001, and there have been failures of major components of the system, forcing us or preventing us from meeting the permitted disinfection requirements. The fine screen replacement project is in construction, about 85% complete. It is expected to be completed this September at a cost of $3.7 million. So Buckman has 2 fine screens at the head of the plant to capture materials such as debris, plastics, and fibers in order to protect the downstream treatment processes and equipment from clogging. These screens were installed in 2009, but they experienced frequent blinding and hairpinning. They were rebuilt in 2016, but still did not function properly. As a result, rags were collecting in the digesters, in the lines, plugging the lines, decreasing the performance. So this project scope consists of demolition of the existing fine screens and construction of a more robust and efficient screening system. The new raw sludge holding tank is currently in design and about 90% complete. JEA should receive pricing for this project shortly. Once received, the proposal will be reviewed, and if acceptable, staff will come back to the board to request approval. The project is currently estimated to cost $41.4 million. Biosolids from 8 other facilities were processed at Buckman. Biosolids from Arlington East, District 2, and Southwest are pumped to the Buckman plant to the head of the plant. Biosolids from 5 other plants are hauled and pumped directly to the raw sludge storage tank, and the raw sludge from Buckman is also sent here. The tank has been in operation since 1960. It was last cleaned around 2001. Currently, we estimate the tank is about 25 feet tall. About 9 feet of that are rags. And in addition, the tank is deemed to be too large for its intended purpose. The tank sits on pile supports. We conducted a study to determine if we can somehow modify the tank to fit a smaller tank at grade. Unfortunately, the study was inconclusive. The best solution is to construct a new tank at grade at a new location.
When we're looking at that picture, is it just that one tank, or are you referring to all these tanks?
Yes, sir. It's the one at the front.
Okay, it's just the one tank. Okay. I know nothing about biosolids tanks.
So we have just completed the design of the existing biosolids facility rehabilitation. The total construction cost is estimated to be $13.8 million. As mentioned earlier, the new process facility is expected to be completed in 2018. Meanwhile, there are several components in the existing facility that cannot last that long and represent significant risk to the safe and reliable operation of the facility. So this project assesses the condition of the existing building structure and the equipment and specifies any needed repairs and modifications to keep them in service until the new system is in place. Staff is committed to reviewing the design and value engineer wherever possible to save costs. The aeration basin air header and the diffuser replacement is in design about 60%. The total construction is about 25.9 million. The fine bubble aeration system, which allows efficient transfer of oxygen from the blowers to the microorganisms, was installed in 2001. Due to the accumulation of grit and turbulent movement of the water from mixing, some parts of the aeration system have failed, resulting in less effective treatment. So the scope of this project includes cleaning the aeration tanks, removing the grit, and replacing the aeration system in the tanks with new headers and diffusers.
And that's just at Buckman?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is the last project. The operations and maintenance building project is in construction, about 75% complete. The cost is about $2.6 million. The existing operations maintenance building, also built in 1958, was deteriorated in many locations and required a complete overhaul. So we renovated the full renovation of the workspace and offices for our electrical and instrumentation technicians. This project is expected to be completed in 2025.
It's 75% complete, but not till 2025?
Yes, sir. Beginning of 2025, just so until the end of this school year. It's just now the final details of the bathrooms, the walls, the offices, and some of the equipment, which takes a little bit to be delivered.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail later. Doesn't need to come now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So on March 26th, the board approved the ratification of the construction management at risk contract to Wharton Smith in the amount of $104,107,459.27. Wharton Smith submitted a final cost proposal for the biosolids replacement project. The guaranteed maximum price of $207,433,416 is based on a 90% design. The pricing includes contingency necessary to cover appropriate risks and potential design true-up changes to 100% design. Contract costs are based on open book accounting, and the final price will consist of actual costs plus agreed upon fees as outlined in the GMP proposal. Value engineering and scope reduction items will continue to be considered as construction progresses. For the aeration and basin air header and diffuser replacement, we're requesting $1.8 million for the early work package for equipment purchase, essentially for slide gauge, diffusers, mixers for long lead time. As Ray mentioned, 2 projects are complete and are under budget. The blower system improvements was under budget by over $576,000, and the UV system improvements was under budget by $3.5 million. So taking those into account, the table summarizes the additional request of $205,152,015 to award to Wharton Smith for the new not to exceed amount of $309,259,474.27. So this award will allow the completion of the biosolid system replacement project, the largest of the 8. I know there's a lot of information to digest. I'll pause here. Do you have any questions for me?
I just have one question. When we spoke about this many months ago, the question was, is there value engineering available? And I was told yes. The question is, do these numbers reflect any value engineering? Is this a different number than we were presented back at the Capitol meeting that John and I had with y'all?
Overall, the Buckman Biosolids replacement project remains the same. The value engineering will be conducted with the biosolids facility rehab, and we'll continue to do that with the raw sludge holding tank and the
Aeration-based
airhead or diffuser.
Yeah, I would just be more in favor of that being evaluated before we sign off on the ultimate high number. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I agree, Rick.
That's the frustration I feel also, Rick, is $207 million after we've just spent 66.9 just doesn't feel right. And I'm not saying it isn't right. I suspect that it is, but it's hard to have any meaningful input into something like that, given the information we've gotten.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were going to do some value engineering, and it seems like we've talked about it, but it doesn't seem like anything's happened. I think my concern. It's a lot of money.
Well, let me clarify just to make sure. So for the, and I please jump in, or whoever the team. So for the future requests, the proposals, those are being valued engineered and going to be looked at. I believe that for the current request for the biosolids replacement facility, that was evaluated. Correct me if I'm wrong. And so the team felt like after looking at that proposal that came in, or that GMP, that this was the appropriate amount to bring forth. Am I incorrect about that?
If I may, Ray,
Yes.
it's an open book contract, which means we only pay for what is spent, which means that, yes, we have done the value engineering. There might be more opportunities between now and it gets executed, but it's an open book, which allows us to be able to look for execution, reducing risk numbers on values that are out there. And that's the approach that has been taken.
So when I said that the 207 million didn't change for the biosolids replacement project, didn't mean to imply that value engineering was done. The timing is such that when we last met to talk about the project, the contractor was already in the process of providing cost for this GMP. So all the value engineering efforts have done before, and everything since then has remained constant. They haven't changed. We just received the numbers, we reviewed, and only when after they were deemed reasonable and appropriate, we are going to the board for approval.
I just, and that is to go into a GMP.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel comfortable about it at this point. I don't know what to say.
Well, that's the problem with coming in the middle of a project.
Yeah.
We have not had an opportunity to evaluate, and I think we've got to run the railroad. And I think if management is comfortable that they have dug as deep as they can and they've looked at various alternatives, I think at this point, there's not much we can do to add value, but I would recommend that we approve it, but I feel as uneasy as you do.
Okay.
Can I add something to that? And so the process moving forward will not put the board, the committee in this position again, because you are now just seeing it.
Right.
And we certainly understand that. But what I will say, there's, well, 200 is a on the face of it, 200 million is a big number. The team has evaluated, looked at the open book, and feel that this is the appropriate thing to do. And the longer that we put it off, the dryers, the more that we are going to see in the disposal costs and the operating costs for these biosolids. And we are seeing that now because of running with no redundancy with one dryer. So there's consequences with this. and you all are not aware of this because you don't see this every day.
I don't.
And so, as I said, very good questions, but when we come to you, especially for these large projects, here are the various options that were looked at. Here are the consequences for not going forward. But that's what we're seeing right now if we delay this.
I understand. Let me ask one other question. The new contracting language and so forth that was presented to us earlier, can that enhancement be incorporated into this change order to make sure we are doing our best and so forth?
Through the chair, we certainly can talk with them about that. Yes, we'll approach them with some of the updates that we've made. We are in the process of making more updates through the owner's rep, so we have some of those already completed, and we will have the rest of them completed by June when we bring.
Having a little bit more controls in place, I think would help and so forth. And this, coming back and say, okay, we're going to give you a $200 million change order, but we've got some new policies and procedures that need to be incorporated into this into this change order.
Understood.
It's not a change order, is it?
No, it's not no. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Chair Baker. The whole concept. No, it's not a change order.
Oh, okay.
Change orders connote something unseen. Or
No. Ray, I do change orders. It's a change in scope. They're not necessarily, change order is not a bad word. Change orders go up, change orders go down. It's a change in the scope of work. There's nothing wrong with the word change order. I mean, it has a negative connotation, but it is not a negative, in the real world and so forth. It is a change in the scope of work. We're adding this amount of work to this contract, but this is a brand new contract then, is what you're saying?
It is. No, it's the same. It's the same contract. But when I think of change orders, it's something that we did not envision happening.
No. It's a modification to an existing contract.
Yeah, it's something that
contract.
Exactly. It's a contract amendment, and maybe that's something maybe that's what we should call it. But it's something that we were anticipating. But we can look at the new language and see what can be incorporated with this amendment.
Ray, I think it would also be helpful if we could get a one pager that said what was the payback on why we need to move forward, sooner rather than later.
Okay.
If we're spending $1 million a year on disposing of the waste, I wouldn't spend $207 million. If we're spending 20 million, that's a different subject. So that's why I think that little bit of information can give us some comfort.
Yeah, we can definitely get that for you.
Yes, sir. We can.
Listen to Rick and John is going out, being at the facility and seeing what they're really talking about. It just visual to me helps. That's just a suggestion.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
And to address Mr. Baker's question, we can certainly do that, but I want to add, it is a little bit more complex than that because at the volume that we create, we may not be able to find a place in the state that we can haul to and dispose via land application or landfill with the recent changes in regulations. So we may be able to put some cost to it, assuming that the current locations can accept. But I think that when you're talking about our volume, you're gonna have to go out of states, and the hauling cost would be extreme. The payback would be within a few years.
That'd be good to see in writing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we get a motion to approve this or?
Yeah, Mr. Baker, this is all for informational purposes. We don't have a physical quorum, so everything's being presented to you for information.
Okay, great.
And there'll be further consideration at the board level.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay.
I do want to bring to your attention, the three projects, biosolids raw sludge, facility rehab, and the aeration, airheader. Those are in design, and we expect the projects to cost about 78.5 million. And as Rick said, once the cost proposal received, reviewed, value engineered, and deemed reasonable, we will come back to the board and request additional approval.
When you list those estimated future requests, is that 6 months, 6 years, 6 days? What's the timeframe on that far right column?
The facility rehab project will be done by 2018. The aeration
2028.
I'm sorry, 2028. The aeration airheader project will take the longest because we can only take one tank down at a year. So that's at least a 4-year process for that project. We cannot work any faster because Buckman has to continue to treat while we take the tank down.
I think we're talking about coming back to first this committee and then subsequent to the board in about 2 to 3 months.
Okay, thank you.
Oh my God. Let's move on, if we could.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next, project in the top. I'm gonna talk, faster. Since I find it. So this is Arlington, and like Buckman, go to the next slide, please. So Arlington is the second largest of our plants, 20 million gallons per day. The difference between this one and currently Buckman, this produces reclaimed water for irrigation. We did some major upgrades from 2015 to 2020. That's known as phase 1. This is now phase 2, and the two largest upgrades under this umbrella is the influent structure and the aeration basin and blowers, and Haibu is going to get into that. So the estimate, let me just say this. We bid this, and we talked about this at the workshop and a little bit at the board meeting. This is being presented as an information item. Wanted the committee to be aware of this because this came in less than what our current delegated authority is. So our current is 100. We recognize that there's going to be an action item at the next board meeting, but we wanted you all to be aware of this, that this was happening. So this is information. That's one reason that we're bringing it to you. Second reason is because it's an important project. And the third reason is, even though we went our traditional, we received one bid on this. And so, Rick, I haven't forgotten about your question. Jenny's going to go into, once we receive that one, and I'm going to turn to you now, Jenny. Once we receive that one bid, what did we do? Like, how did we what did we communicate? Went out to the contractors? I'm giving your presentation, Jenny. Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair, Jenny McCollum. So we always go through a process, as Ray said, when we get less than 3 bidders, actually. And so this one, we got one. This was the feedback that we received from them. The bidders that did attend our pre-bid meeting, there were 3 that showed up and only 1 bid. And the feedback that we received that there was just too much complexity to this project for them to handle it. And in addition to the duration of the timeline. And so we extended the bid when we saw that we had very low competition. Reached out, tried to see if there were changes that we could make. And this ended up being on the street for 2.5 months, trying to drive that competition up. We were unsuccessful, but we do that type of process every time we see low competition come in before we open the bids.
Thank you.
Pause there for any questions before we go into the projects themselves.
Next steps. Where are?
All right. Hei's going to go into more specifics next slide on the projects under this area. Go ahead, Hai.
Thank you, Ray. So should be very familiar to you. This project scope includes two areas. First, the influence structure. You see the screens there, they're designed to capture plastics, debris, and rags to prevent clogging of downstream equipment. They were built in 2000 and also have experienced severe deterioration due to high levels of hydrogen sulfide gas. So the project scope includes complete replacement of the influence structure, which will have the ability to bypass flows and design for greater efficiency, capacity, and reliability. To the left, the aeration basin and blowers, they provide an environment for oxygen, for biological treatment. They are undersized, and Arlington East has difficulty meeting nitrogen reduction during winter and storm events. So the project scope includes a new aeration basin, a blower, and primary clarifier, which will address the issues. The design was completed by Hazen and Sawyer. It was originally to be delivered via CMAR, we mentioned, but because our requirements for completion timeline changed, we didn't have to meet the original timeline, allowed us to complete the project by design, bid, build. It was bid under invitation for bid. We advertised the project on November of 2023 and received one bid January 30 of 2024 from Wharton Smith in the amount of $96,857,000. The bid amount was approximately 20% higher than the engineer's estimate. However, an analysis of the estimate versus bid showed that the estimate was consistently low across all categories and underestimated rising prices in materials and labor, underestimated the cost of bypassing, and failed to account for additional efforts, such as the efforts required for site work, excavation, shoring, and dewatering. So although not required, the contractor allowed JEA to review their open book pricing. The review of the bid showed competitive pricing from subcontractors and material and equipment suppliers. So based upon the analysis and review, the bid by Wharton Smith was deemed to be reasonable, and we intend to bring this item to the awards committee to request approval of the awarding the contract to Wharton Smith. Again, no action is required by the board. We just want the committee to be aware of this project for 3 reasons that Ray mentioned. It is a very significant project. The award amount is very close to the delegated authority, and that JEA received only one bid. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Obviously, that we're going to revise that delegated authority, it will require board action.
I know we're trying to move things along, and I apologize, but I just don't understand why we just got one bid. I mean, that's just a sized contract like this. Yeah. And I don't want to slow things down, but I just don't understand that. But sorry to, yeah, I know John, something we just got to figure out.
That's, your point is well taken, and we have got, and I know we've probably been doing this all along, but if we're down to 3 contractors and 2 of them are choosing not to bid, we've got to go recruit other people from out of state or whatever. As much as I hate to do that, we're setting ourselves up for all kind of mischief and everything else if we, do that.
Why don't we talk about that?
So we have made efforts with the alternative delivery methods to recruit larger firms. They do prefer to bid on the alternative delivery methods versus just straight bids like this. So we have gotten Wharton Smith and Garney to also do work for us over the past 3 or 4 years. So that is the extended effort that we have been taking to bring different contractors in, bidding things differently to attract them.
But
Hey, this is Zachary Faison. Can you share where are we placing our RFPs and things out? I mean, where are we listing?
So we list them in the paper, we list them on our website. We do targeted outreach as well to vendors via email.
Have we thought about casting our net wider? Could that be a possible potential solution to have more folks to bid on these projects?
Yes, we have also, I mean, in the past to get the competition that we have received over the last few years, we have done different trade publications to reach out to larger companies that weren't working with us before.
I think that's a good point, Dr. Faison, as we look at the size of our capital programs going forward. The concept of going further or farther as far as letting this known. We can look into that.
Okay, thanks.
One effort that I think has proven to be successful is we reach out to the engineering and the contracting community. We have had annual meetings where we provide the forecast of the projects that we're going to bid out. The feedback from both engineers and contractors community, if the first time they see the project is in an RFP, then it's too late. So we do want to let them know about our projects ahead of time. And that's how we were able to get Warren Smith and Garney and Prosper and Gary, PCL and Sun, all those are the contractors who are interested in working with us. And I think if we can continue to do that, we'll be more successful.
I think that's got to be a focus. And Bobby's absolutely right on figuring out what it is we need to do to get more competition. And we can't just say, well, that's just so. Okay. Any other questions on that?
I hate to slow this down, but to me, delaying this project, I think it sets a precedent when people say there's only one bidder or three bidders. I think we delay this project and try to get more bidders. I know the question is how critical these projects are to get done and can we delay them? But John, I hate to slow we got 20 minutes left and.
No, I think that's, I think that's a legitimate comment. And I would ask Ray and Hyatt to come back to us on that with an answer of what happens. I mean, can we delay it? Can we seek more bids? Where are we on that? And just, you can just communicate with us together, and if we need to pull together to have a meeting, we will.
Hey, John, I don't disagree, but I just would like to know what the ramifications would be for delaying. I don't disagree at all with you and Bobby. I just would like to know if we do delay, what ramifications might result because of that.
Obviously didn't say it well. That's what I was asking for, was the ramifications for delaying it, and then we can decide whether or not that makes sense.
I think at this point in time, we can afford a delay of, say, up to half a year to regroup and rebid.
I think that sends a good message. It may cost us a lot of money, but I think it's worth it.
We can, from an operational standpoint, it's not the same ramifications as when we were talking about biosolids. From a pricing standpoint, once the number is out there, if we're looking to get a better number, it makes it harder, but that doesn't mean let's give it a try.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that input. Okay, we're going to delay this, and the Capital Projects Committee can look forward to seeing this on a subsequent agenda. I'm going to turn towards the easement acquisitions. Going to talk fast. Just talk about the beginning of, I'll give the introduction, and I'm very pleased to have to my left here our newest VP of Operations Support, Kim Willer, who is going to go into the depth on the easements. Real estate is under Kim's umbrella. So, reason that we're bringing this before, why are we bringing easements to the Capital Projects Committee? Because the reason that we're getting these easements is to support 2 capital projects. One of these capital projects, Mayo to Greenland Energy Center, is a planned project now. It's not under construction. This is an electric transmission line a little bit over 9 miles once the connections are made. The reason for this project is to support future growth, to address reliability, as well as to address resiliency. So the underlying easement will support having that project happen. There is a water transmission project shown here. Can you go to the next slide, please? Called Deerwood to Greenland Water Reclamation Facility. Again, another major project. The reason that we're bringing this, again, before the committee, this easement to support the project, over 2.5 miles of reclaimed water main and almost 7 miles of raw water transmission main. Both of these projects support future growth. Both of these projects address resiliency and reliability. One, electric transmission, the other we're talking about for the sustainability of our well fields. They share a common corridor. So there was some malice of forethought, hey, in the same area, let's bring these easements together. Discussions are underway with the landowner, and I'm going to turn it over to Kim now.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. As Ray said, this isn't brick and mortar. This is just land, but we need land to put the brick and mortar in. So this is strictly about the easements that we need to accommodate 2 water transmission lines and 1 electric transmission line. And the water lines, if you go to the next slide, the water line, it starts at the Greenland WRF and it heads north, and the electric line shares the 150-foot wide corridor for about 1.5 miles, 1.6 miles actually. And the water easement is shown in a solid blue and reduces to 75 feet wide and continues north for about 3 miles. And the proposed electric easement that we're here discussing today, the solid yellow line, not the dashed yellow line, remains 150 feet wide, turns east for about 2 miles, and then it goes north for about 1.4 miles for a total of about 3.4 miles. The dashed yellow line, which depicts an additional 4.3 miles of easement, will be presented at a future meeting. So the total, as Ray said, approximately 9.5 miles of easement is needed to complete the electric transmission project, and 4.6 miles is needed for the water mains.
Kim, why don't we go all the way north and then jog to the right, rather than have 2 separate easements?
That's a great question. One I asked myself when I got this job a few weeks ago. And they have been in negotiations with this particular property owner for a couple of years. And this route has been, the property owner is happy with this route. I'll just say it that way. Did I say it right?
Yes, that is the preferred route by the property owner. So there's going to be some time that this area is going to be developed in the future. And so the aesthetics of having major transmission on the front of the development was not looked at favorably.
Gotcha. Then why, if that's the case, are we willing to pay more than the appraisal?
Well, the difference, you're jumping ahead. You must have seen my presentation already. The difference in cost for the alternate routes is a lot higher than the difference in the appraised price and what the property owner has requested.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Please.
Say that again, Kim, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand you.
There's about a $3 million difference between what the property owner has requested and what our appraisal has valued the land as.
Uh-huh.
And the alternate routes will exceed $3 million if we chose another route.
In acquisition costs?
Yes.
No, the cost to reroute the transmission in construction costs for either the transmission or the water lines would be in excess of the $3 million.
It would, I go back to the original question, it would, I know these landowners and I love them, but if it's gotta be cheaper for us to go due north all the way up to the Skinner property and then jog to the right than have to buy two different easements. And I don't know why we have to give in to them every time we turn around. If we're willing to work with them, they need to work with us, I think. We have eminent domain and I wouldn't be scared to use it.
This is stimulating very, very many thoughts around the table.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, those are just issues to bring up and to think about and
Yes, sir.
back to us. Obviously, we're not going to figure it out today.
No, sir. I think, but we have received that input. And so what we can do is, well, let's finish this presentation and then we'll go from there.
Right.
Thank you.
I feel like you've seen it, but we can, I'll be very quick because you jumped right to the end and you knew what we were thinking. So, where we go, the water, okay. The water project does include a 30-inch reclaimed water and a 36-inch raw main. The reclaimed water will complete the second feed of the reclaimed water from the Arlington, as Haibu was talking about, water reclamation facility to the south grid. And the raw water main will allow water from the Main Street well field to go to the south grid. And this, we're able to utilize more water from Main Street, which will reduce the stress on the south grid wells. So as you can see, these projects optimize the existing resources while providing for future growth and sustainability of the existing well fields. And the estimated construction cost of just the two water lines is $68.2 million. Let me go to the next slide. So this is the electric project route in the easement. And as Ray said, it was about 9.5 miles and 150 feet wide, connecting the Greenland Energy Center to the Mayo substation. And the current request is shown in the solid yellow line for about 5 miles. And as you can see on the map, the dashed yellow line, that represents about 4.3 miles of an easement that we will request at a later date. So with an estimated construction cost of $41.5 million, the electric transmission line will provide for future growth, increase reliability, and improve the resiliency of the electric grid.
It would be interesting to know if it did go north and then turned right instead of jogging around the property.
The cost.
Is there a savings in cost? Because I think that all needs to be put in the whole equation.
Yes,
yes,
we can look at that.
We already have that already.
Yeah.
Can provide.
Now for the acquisition valuation. Well, as you know, the landowners have requested $22 million for both the electric and the water easements. And the appraisal for both the easements came in about $3 million less. But the difference in the cost of the alternate routes exceeds the difference between the owner's request and the appraisal. So we go to the next
Was that what I
slide.
was just asking for? That-
Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. No, it was. a
And it's
separate-
clear as mud, unfortunately, on some of these slides, that there's no, there's not.
I ruined your brains with all that other stuff. Mine was pretty simple. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll go first next time. But the recommendation is to purchase both the easements for $22 million for both the electric and the water. And understand that one easement is for the final segment of the water transmission lines, and the other easement is for the future electric transmission lines.
So what we can do, because there's no recommendation requested of this committee, and the committee can't give a recommendation, and we are still in discussion with the property owner, but we can take the input that we received today and continue with the discussions, as well as look at that route that goes straight north, and I think we have a cost for that as well. So we'll take in the input, not expecting any action at this time, and then come back.
Thank you.
Okay, does this conclude our,
Yes, sir, it does. This is the first of our capital projects committee. It concludes the agenda. Thank you for all the input from the committee as well as other board members that joined.
thanks to everybody. I think this was very helpful to me, and I'm sure it was very disturbing to you all, but thank you.
Ted, Ray, staff, thank you guys for all
Thank
your
you.
efforts. This was very helpful. Thank you, thank you.
Yep, great. Thank you, folks. Thanks, John.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John and Rick.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you.